Good afternoon and welcome to the People Power Lunch Hour, live from Philly Cam Studios here in Center City. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and thanks for tuning in on Philly Cam TV and on WPPM 106.5 FM. Today we're going to talk about the current crisis in Puerto Rico. Today I have with me several guests who are going to speak on the subject. I have Ana Montanez with Voces del Barrio, and she's going to talk about the relief and organizing efforts that are happening. And Altie Carrasquillo is going to call into our show and give a first eyewitness account of what has been happening in Puerto Rico since the hurricane struck. And I also have Berta Joubert-Ceci, who is from the International Action Center and Workers' World, who's going to give a history of Puerto Rico and also talk about local organizing around that matter. Stay tuned for all that and more on this edition of the People Power Lunch Hour. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome to the People Power Lunch Hour here at Philly Cam. Today's subject is the humanitarian crisis in Puerto Rico. As many of you might be aware, 2 Category 4 hurricanes struck the island of Puerto Rico in the month of September and has completely devastated the island. Over a million people there are without power. About 90% is still without power. Many more are without running water. And many communities still have not seen any relief efforts from FEMA or not have contact with anybody from the local government. Many people here in the United States who are part of the diaspora, including the 400,000 people here in Pennsylvania, are very concerned about the situation and have been organizing here locally to reach out to their family and friends to find ways to support them. On today's show, we're going to give a little bit of a history of Puerto Rico and find out what conditions led up to the hurricane, and then we'll talk about the local relief efforts on today's show. I want to start with Berta. Welcome to the show. Berta is an organizer with the International Action Center and Workers' World. She's been involved in a lot of social movement organizing here in Philadelphia, and she has been a strong advocate for la gente de Puerto Rico. Welcome to the show.
Muchas gracias. Thank you very much, compañera. I also belong to a committee which is mainly by Puerto Ricans who live in the area. It's Philadelphia Camden Boricua Committee. I'm so glad that you are putting this into context, into historical context, because the catastrophe, and it's a catastrophe, not just a disaster, beyond a humanitarian crisis, is because of the status of the island. It is a colony. When 1898, the U.S. invaded Puerto Rico, a year after, there was another hurricane. It was called San Ciriaco. That devastated also the island. And I want to bring that because it's such a parallel situation now. And I will go a little bit later on the conditions of before Maria. But this parallel is the United States used the devastation of San Ciriaco to really restructure Puerto Rico for their interests, because it was a colony of Spain, and Puerto Rico had a developed agriculture of particularly coffee and tobacco, and had some sugar, but it was coffee and tobacco, which they exported to Europe. So they have their self-sustainment in terms of agriculture. When the United States came, they devalued the currency, 40%. That means that 60%. That means that people suddenly lost 40% of their wealth completely. And they changed it to the dollar. It was the peso, which today in Puerto Rico we say dame un peso, and that's where the peso comes from. It was our original monetary.
Berta, I want to read a passage from something that you posted that I downloaded on Facebook, but it's talking about this. And it says, a year after the United States invaded Puerto Rico in 1898 and imposed a military regime, Hurricane
Siriaco.
Siriaco
I know,
hit the
Siriaco.
island and devastated nearly its entire infrastructure. This allowed the invaders to restructure the country at their convenience. Agriculture was destroyed, and the coffee and tobacco that went to European markets were eventually replaced by the gigantic sugarcane plantations imposed on the U.S. to benefit the sugar industry. Profits went to their home offices in New York and Boston, thus beginning the draining of Boricua's wealth by the U.S. Together with this, the U.S. passed the Four-Acre Act in 1900, which established the U.S. dollar as the official currency of Puerto Rico, replacing the peso, which the U.S. had already devalued in January of 1899. With one Yankee slap, Puerto Ricans lost 40% of their wealth.
Correct. And the sugar, it means, you cannot sustain yourself with sugar. So this didn't benefit Puerto Rico. And of course, within that time also they imposed the Four-Acre Law and also the Jones Law. The Jones Law was after, excuse me, the First World War, and they needed people to go to battle, in the name of the United States. So who did? Puerto Ricans, which since then have died. More Puerto Ricans have died comparatively in their proportion than U.S. soldiers in all the wars. So that really, and they imposed a citizenship. We didn't want it. There was not a referendum. They just imposed it, and it's not a U.S. citizen like people who live here. It's a second U.S. citizenship. So after the sugar, when sugar was not that valued and they started, the agriculture of sugar in the United States, they changed. It has changed through manufacturing. Then right now, I'm going to jump to right now is the pharmaceutical and the high technology that are highly, highly pollutant. So the United States, in 100 and almost 120 years of exploitation, has really devastated our economy. And a colony means that we have no sovereignty, that we cannot restructure our debt, that we cannot restructure our agriculture, that we cannot trade, and that comes into to the scene right now. Because we can, for example, Cuba offer a mobile hospital with 35 professionals, free, and the United States refused. Venezuela offered a whole tanker full of diesel, which is a highly demanded commodity right now because of the generators. The United States refused. Mexico, the electricians union, they offer a whole brigade of skilled workers to help in reestablishing electricity. The United States refused. What they want right now, and this is because of our status as a colony, is to privatize the electric company and the whole energy sector, and they have done that by not opening one of the main generating structures, plants in Puerto Rico, in order to privatize. So people, even the medical center has lost power 5 times. So this is, people have died because of lack of electricity. And now they just yesterday, the governor signed a contract of, I think it's $4 million of that for General Electric, to repair Palo Seco, when the union of the electricians have said, this can be turned on. This can save life and just turn it on. But they want people to suffer. So when you're drowning, they give you a life-saving device, you don't question the life-saving device. You say, I just want to survive. So they are getting people into this state of desperation so they can impose all the privatization. So that's the same thing that they did with San Siriaco, changing the whole structure and privatizing all the national profitable industries in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, and there's some other things that people should know, which is that Puerto Rico was given to the United States by Spain after the Spanish-American War as reparations because they couldn't pay them back. So instead of giving them money, they offered the island of Puerto Rico. Again, the people that were living on the island had no choice in this. They were given, as commodities. Secondly, even though the people of Puerto Rico are U.S. citizens, if you are living on the island, you cannot vote for president. And also, even though there is a member in Congress, that congressperson does not have a vote or a say. And so the people who are in Puerto Rico have no way to really participate in democracy that governs them. However, if you do live on the mainland like we do, we can vote in elections. So that's why the diaspora is very important in advocating for people on the island. Anna, I wanted to go to you so you can, be able to offer some insight as well, too, in terms of why we're in this situation. And I want to give you an opportunity to talk more about some of these things and also the Jones Act, which is something that a lot of people are advocating right now to repeal.
Well, as far as the Jones Act, a lot of us in the diaspora, we didn't know about it because it's not something that we're taught in our education. For me, I learned about the Jones Act when I took a leadership class with the Latino Partnership, and that's kind of what awoke in my activism as far as Puerto Rico. Them lifting the Jones Act for 10 days, to me, was just kind of like a bandage for us because they knew we were hurt and we needed them to get there, but 10 days is not enough for anybody to get there to help them. So we need the Jones Act to be demolished so that our people can get help, because there's plenty of other countries that are willing to help our people, and, they're not allowed to.
So if folks are not aware, the Jones Act, also known as the Merchant Marine Act, does provide some protections for Americans who are in the shipping union. So there's been a lot of confusion about what we're advocating for. But to be clear, I think we're all talking about the part of the Jones Act that pertains to Puerto Rico, which says that no foreign vessels can enter Puerto Rican ports. They have to first dock and unload in the United States and then put their cargo on an American ship that has to be pre-approved before it can enter. And this restriction has caused a lot of financial trouble for Puerto Rico because it raises the price of imports and makes goods that are coming into Puerto Rico very expensive. And it's related to this evisceration of the agricultural economy because there was a time when Puerto Rico was very self-sustaining. They did not need to import agricultural goods. And now, since they have switched over to a more tourist service-based, economy, there is a dependence on imported goods from other places. And, I also want to include the Virgin Islands in this too, because I lived in the Virgin Islands for a time. Mm-hmm. And during September 11th, they closed the port and the airport. And it became very clear that nothing was coming from the island. When you have a blockade and a port, you realize how dependent they are on these foreign vessels coming in, right, bringing food and water and other things. And so even in that short period when we couldn't have any ships coming into the port, people were very concerned. The supermarkets were empty. And I thought, wow, people here aren't growing things. People here aren't self-sustaining. Like, this is really, really bad. And so again, you don't realize it because, when you go to the store, it's already there. Right. But if you take it away, then it becomes very evident that there is a dependency on foreign goods. And so that is why people are advocating for the Jones Act to be repealed. It's not to do a disservice to American shipping workers and unions. Certainly another law can be created to provide those protections. But the part where it pertains to Puerto Rico is very detrimental. And even many people say that, had it not been for these high import costs, that it would have saved Puerto Rico millions and millions, not billions of dollars, and it would not even be in a debt if it not had to incur those costs.
Yeah, I wanted to expand on that, on the Jones Law, because as a result, there is an average of 600 million per year that is lost to the Puerto Rico economy. And an example, if we get we get plantains from the Dominican Republic, it cannot go directly to Puerto Rico. It has to go to Jacksonville, Florida, and between, I think it's 79 Miles from Dominican Republic to Puerto Rico from that point on the port, and it's 1,300 miles from Jacksonville to Puerto Rico. So they have to go Jacksonville, unload, ship, load in U.S. vessel with U.S. personnel, which is the most expensive merchant marine in the world, and then goes to Puerto Rico. So it's double and triple the prices of any foodstuff, which is 85% of what we consume. It's imported.
Yeah, I mean, they can't even receive anything from the British Virgin Islands, which is also nearby. Jamaica is nearby, Barbuda. All of those islands have the ability to trade goods between one another, but they are not allowed to come to Puerto Rico to exchange those goods. And it seems really crazy that they would have to go all the way to Jacksonville, Florida, and then back instead of going right to their neighbors.
And I want to just, in terms of Jones Act, not just that, but agriculture. In Puerto Rico, for example, we're coffee producing and coffee drinkers. And we have really excellent coffee that we used to export. But right now, who gets subsidized for the coffee? It is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola bought like Café Rico, Café Crema, Yaucono, which are like our staple, regular coffee from Puerto Rico. But it's not Puerto Rico. It's the worst Puerto Rican grain, the Arabica grains, but they mix it with other countries, and it's the worst grain. If you drink Yaucono now, it's not Yaucono from 10 years ago, and that's because it's Coca-Cola now. However, small farmers, los cafetaleros, coffee farmers from Puerto Rico, they don't get subsidized. So they cannot develop the economy. And that's how we don't I'm just bringing coffee because it's something that I love and many people love. But this goes with every sector of the economy. When we try to develop our economy, that's what happened. And that's part of being a colony.
Yeah, it's similar to also the dairy farms. I read there's only 2 like major dairy farms left. And that drives up the cost of milk. That's why a lot of people still drink powdered milk that they import from other places because there's no more dairy farms. Again, increasing the dependence on imported goods.
Right.
When at a time, there were dairy farms everywhere. People had their own cows. They didn't even necessarily have a farm, It's just people milked their own cows. They had their own vegetables and fruit. And especially now with the hurricane, something that people keep talking about is there's no more foliage. The trees have been ripped up. The bushes have been ripped up. I know my family who lives in Puerto Rico, they all live around a school, and they all share fruit and produce, mango trees, cocoa, guava. All of those things they all shared, and now those trees have been ripped up and gone. And it will take a very, very long time. And again, just further adding to a dependency of foreign food coming into the country. I wanted to talk also about the bombing off the coast of Vieques. There was a lot of work done from activists in Vieques and Puerto Rico to kick the U.S. military out and close Roosevelt roads and stop the bombing. And now that both hurricanes who crossed the path of Vieques has churned up a lot of the water, and there is a very big concern now that a lot of those bombs and remnants of those activities are now resurfacing and affecting people. Can you talk more about that, Berta?
Well, what they did in Culebra and then Vieques, it's another crime for which the United States owes reparation. And I wanted just to establish that because there is a spread of help us. It's not. The United States has the obligation to help Puerto Rico, to assist Puerto Rico, to support, and to give whatever we need because they destroy Vieques. Since the 40s, they have been bombing Vieques and storing really even depleted uranium. So it's something that they owe. We fought for it. We invaded the secure places of the United States where they had the bases. They had to 3/4 of the island of Vieques is like a long strip, and 3/4 were occupied by the Navy. But one of the goals after we recover, and we recover, it's quote unquote, because it's like the State Department, it's still in charge of some of the place. So the people of Vieques have not been received any reparations. The places have not developed. I went at the 10th anniversary of the leaving the Navy, and it was outrageous, and it was very sad to see all these luxurious, high mountain sites that were being built by people from the U.S. You say just a name like, Linda Smith with this is the, and that, it was land after land after land, that plus it has been developed by U.S. Businesses. We wanted to go to a restaurant just at Puerto Rican. We couldn't find any in one of the coasts. On the other side, there was only one business that was Puerto Rican owned. So it has been taken. It has been a here regentrification that has happened in Vieques, and that's what they want to have in Puerto Rico right now. And I just want to remind, Albizu Campos was our nationalist hero. And he was, repressed by the United States. But he said something very important. The United States wants Puerto Rico. They want the cage, but they don't want the birds. And we see that in the immigration. Just this month, 39,000 people from Puerto Rico have migrated to Florida. Just to Florida, and the month that hasn't finished. So the island is emptying. And in Vieques, it has been even worse because it was attacked by Irma. It was hit by Irma, which the main, we call mainland Puerto Rico, not the United States. The mainland was not affected that much. It toppled, some power towers. But the Vieques and Culebra were really hit. So right now, it's a complete devastation of Vieques.
Yeah, that's right. So Vieques and Culebra are two small islands that are part of Puerto Rico that are on the eastern side of the island in between the Virgin Islands. And yes, there are reports. There is a community radio station, which, I participated in help building, Radio Vieques, and they are really struggling. They are off the air, and the island is completely devastated. Most of the people have lost their homes. And there is really no help coming to the island. And, again, there are a lot of people who are already suffering from cancers and diseases due to the bombing and the testing by the U.S. military. And now the situation is really escalated into a full-on catastrophe, as you said. I wanted to ask you both about your family or friends in Puerto Rico. And Ana, I wanted to ask you how your family is doing or your friends, and if you could offer any information about what's currently happening there.
Well, my aunt was actually stuck in Jalco. My aunt lives half of the year in Puerto Rico and half of the year in Connecticut. When the hurricane happened, we were trying to get her out of there. And her flight kept getting canceled. We were worried because she's diabetic and was running out of medicine. But thank God she was able to get out. She's been home for about 2 weeks. She's very traumatized on what happened. As far as my immediate family, luckily my immediate family is here in the States. I do have a childhood friend that I grew up with that I'm concerned about. She's in Bayamon, and she's up in the mountains. Excuse me.
It's very emotional. A lot of us have been struggling to keep it together and stay strong for them. And it's very hard to hear the stories and watch the news and the images, especially when you're here and you feel like you can't do a lot. Right. That feeling of helplessness is very real. I think that's why a lot of us have been coming together to find ways to support one another, because that connection the diaspora has to the island is still very strong for many of us. I know we talk with our families on social media, we call them, and the way Puerto Rican culture is, we're very close with our family and friends, and especially in those places that they have no communication, the fear of not knowing, right?
Right.
Not knowing what happened to them. It's really hard. Berta, do you have people that you have heard from or are worried about?
Well, I was born in Puerto Rico, so my roots are the majority of my family is there. I have not been able to talk with all of them, but I know from the other ones who had like the land connection, that's the only line that survived because it was under,
Underground.
subterranean, underground. But I have a cousin, which is who is the one that concerns me, whose house was very weak, and he lost all the half of the house, which is very common in wooden and weaker structures. And the washing machine, he found it at the other side of the river. Just like, so many houses. In terms of my family, they are fine. In terms of when you say fine, it's like they are alive. They didn't die. Everybody lost something, and are suffering. And when we feel Puerto Rico, it's not just our immediate family. When you see, and we here, it's even harder because we see from here what Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico cannot see because they don't have internet. We have the luxury to see Facebook videos. They cannot see there. Because even today I got a message from Deborah, it's a friend. It's like, please don't send links, don't send photos. When I have access to this thing, I have to go, I don't know how many miles to get signal. And when I can only see text a little bit. So don't send text, don't send it. So we are the ones who see the devastation.
Yes, it's very sad. And that's why we're doing this, to offer a different perspective and to actually have a conversation about it that includes people from the community, because there are a lot of outsiders coming now, to take advantage of these stories, but they're not really truly understanding what people are dealing with unless they're in and of the community. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk more with Berta and Ana, and we're going to have Altie Carrasquillo on the phone speaking with us, telling us her experience in Puerto Rico. I'm Vanessa Maria Graber, and you are watching and listening to the People Power Lunch Hour on WPPM and Philly Cam TV. We'll be right back.
Sunday. Palo Limón, soy de donde se hacen carreras de cobito, soy de donde canta el jibarito, soy de donde la R suena como L y que no se me quede el ay bendito, soy de donde se hace sofrito con pilón y maceta, donde el nativo es de pura cepa, donde el tranquilo saca pepa. Yo soy boricua, pa' que tú lo sepas.
Loco de contento con su cargamento para la ciudad, ay, para la ciudad. Lleva en su pensamiento todo un mundo lleno de felicidad, ay, de felicidad. Piensa remediar la situación del hogar que es toda su ilusión así. ¡Qué alegre! El jibarito va cantando así, diciendo así, pensando así por el camino. Si yo vendo la carga, mi Dios qué lindo, un traje a mi viejita voy a comprar. Y alegre.
Welcome back. You're listening to the People Power Lunch Hour on WPPM and watching on Philly Cam TV. I'm your host, Vanessa Maria Graber, and I'm here in the studio joined by Berta Joubert from the International Action Center and the Comité Boricua de Philadelphia, and I'm here with Ana Montanez. She's the organizer with Voces del Barrio. And on the phone right now, I'm joined by Altie Carrasquillo. Altie has just returned from Puerto Rico. She lives in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and she experienced both
Hello?
Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria. Hello, Altie.
Hi, Vanessa. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
So tell our listeners a little bit about your experience in Puerto Rico. You were in the town of Luquillo, and you experienced both hurricanes. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened during the hurricanes, what you experienced, and the aftermath of the storm?
Well, I was in Luquillo, which is the town in the northeastern coast of Puerto Rico. It's a population of 20,000. And I was there just to check on my parents' houses. And I was struck with Irma, which really wasn't as bad as we expected. But like they say in Puerto Rico, it was just a rehearsal for Maria. And so 2 weeks later, exactly on a Wednesday, we were hit with Hurricane Maria, which was pretty devastating to the island, as you well know. In Luquillo, we were struck really bad, but not as bad as other towns in the southern part of the island. We were without water for 5 days, which was really difficult, and without electricity. Actually, has been a week since I arrived, and as of today, they still don't have electricity, which is really very hard for the residents of Puerto Rico. I stayed at my parents' house during the hurricane, and it was horrible just listening to the wind, which was more than 145 miles an hour. I thought the windows were going to blow away. It was very scary. And two of my friends and my neighbors stayed with me, so we wouldn't all be alone at our houses. We didn't have any communications because we didn't have a radio. Not really prepared for this, so we didn't know what was going on at the time, or the devastation in the entire island until the following day when we were able to get out and check to see what damages were done in Luquillo. It was pretty bad, actually. The supermarket closed down. It was hit so hard, and the only Walgreens we had also shut down, so you couldn't go to the pharmacy. The utility poles, there were like 3 utility poles that fell, so it was difficult just getting through town in a car. So it was pretty bad, actually. It was pretty bad.
And I know that your parents' house didn't suffer any damage. How about your neighbors or people in the community? What kinds of things did you see in the aftermath of the storm?
Well, within the town of Luquillo, most of the houses are, concrete. So they stood up the storm, and I knew my parents' house was going to survive. With the exception of the wind and the rain, which one of my mother's house was a little bit inundated because the winds were so forceful and it just pushed through the windows. My neighbor's house, which was a wooden house, but she had zinc on her roof, was totally blown away from the wind, so they had a lot of damage. And mostly people who are near the beach received the impact because, they're so close to the ocean. And other than that, we tried to survive as best as we could because we did save up water. We had gallons and gallons of water. So, we can use that for such a long time. So then we were totally without water. There was no water in the supermarkets. It was kind of hard to have to drink tap water because we were instructed not to do so. So not having water for a couple of days was the most difficult part of this whole. I kind of got used to not having electricity, but not being able to communicate with my children out here in the States was really hard. My kids were frantic, not knowing whatever happened to me. So that was one of the hardest part. Luquillo has survived pretty well. I mean, the mayor is doing the best he can, and some of the FEMA help hasn't been really distributed well in the island because the roads were not, fixed, or the utility poles were not. So it's been difficult to get help to small towns and the countryside where there was a lot of damage.
And a lot of people have mentioned that a lot of the trees and the leaves have blown off. Did you see that as well?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
A lot of people have mentioned that the trees were uprooted and a lot of the leaves were taken off bushes and the foliage.
Yeah.
That it looked very,
Yeah.
very different because Puerto Rico is so green.
Yeah, actually, I can look out Luquillo. I can look out and see El Yunque, and it looked like California. It was totally burned from the winds. Very sad to see El Yunque that way because I'm very close to El Yunque. And it's not even passable, I think, at this point. So a lot of the trees were, uprooted. And, of course, the infrastructure in Puerto Rico is not exactly, perfect. So a lot of the utility poles are old, and they were knocked down. They were totally, totally blown away. So it's taken a while to repair. I think they worked on the main roads. And not being able to get to the airport was another difficulty. So yeah, the trees were just lifted off and fallen on top of cars, and it was hard. And without any communication, I didn't know what was going on in the rest of the island because I didn't have a phone. I didn't have television. I couldn't communicate with anybody. So I was able to pick up a small transistor radio at Walmart. And then I was able to pick up some of what was going on the rest of the island.
But it wasn't until you came back to the States that you really were able to get informed about what was happening.
Exactly. My kids were frantic, and because they were watching CNN and MSNBC and all these other channels, and they had a better information than I did of what was going on. So you guys out here were more informed than we were because we didn't have communication. We couldn't communicate. We didn't have television, cable, nothing. So you guys out here knew more than we did. And it has gotten better, but there's still people here in the States who have not been able to communicate with family members, especially in the countryside where there was so much destruction, and just getting to the roads in the higher mountains. It's kind of been difficult for the electric company to try to restore energy. Unfortunately, they say till December. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's going to be a long time.
Before I let you go, Altie, there's a lot of people here in the United States who really want to help. They've asked me and others how they can donate and what do people need. From your personal experience, what are the items that you think people need the most and that they could be sending to Puerto Rico?
I feel that the needs are not clothing, because people tend to send clothing when there's a crisis like this. I don't think that's a big need, but I do feel that we need water, potable water, agua potable, batteries. We totally ran out of C and D batteries. Couldn't find a C battery in the entire island. That's how bad it got because of the flashlights. Candles we were using. And I guess mostly Pampers, maybe, perhaps baby food, items like that, non-perishable items, and canned goods, which is what I was living off for 3 weeks because there's no electricity, so we don't have refrigerators, so therefore, we can't buy anything that's going to get spoiled, so the supermarkets are not doing too well. So mostly canned items and things like that.
Well, thank you so much, Altie, for giving us that report, and we're glad that you're home safe. And
Thank you.
We hope you'll continue to keep us updated on the situation.
I've been very moved by all of the organizations that have donated to Puerto Rico. I mean, it's been incredible. unfortunately, due to the distribution problem that we were having, it's not getting out as fast as it should. There's a lot of items at the port in San Juan which have not been able to be distributed because of the roads, and I did want to mention that we did not have a gasoline crisis because there was enough gasoline to go around to the gas stations, and I'm sure you saw the lines. There were 200 and 300 people. It was because it wasn't being distributed. I mean, they didn't have enough tankers. They didn't have enough drivers, and the roads were not passable. So it was kind of difficult to get the gasoline to the gas stations, and that was the reason why you saw the long lines. It wasn't because it was scarce. So people thought that was the problem, but that wasn't what happened.
Well, again, I want to thank you for that eyewitness account and for letting our listeners and viewers out there know what was going on. So we're going to leave it there. But thank you so much, Altie. And again, we're glad you're home safe.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure, Vanessa.
Okay.
Take
That was Altie
take care.
Carrasquillo, and she lives in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. She's just returned from Luquillo, Puerto Rico, after having survived both Hurricane Maria and Irma. Anna, she talked about what items can be donated. I want you to tell our listeners and viewers about Voces del Barrio and the relief efforts that you have been leading here in Philadelphia.
So right now we have a donation center, which is being led by our compañero Ezequiel Lopez, and I'm helping him out. Right now what we need is life straws. Life straws are these filters that people can use, and they can drink any type of water without getting sick. And right now, on the news I watched the other day that people are drinking contaminated, portable water, and knowing that they're going to get sick, but some of them rather die slowly than dehydrate. So that's important. I agree with Asti. They don't need any more clothes. People need food, and people need water. Antiseptics, antibacterial lotion, those things are important. Alcohol, because there's no water and there's no electricity, there's a lot of germs and bacteria that are around. So just that, and also mosquito repellent, because from what I hear from folks over there, it's bad.
So can you tell people where they can donate, and if people want to volunteer, can they help as well?
Absolutely. We're located at 523 West Rising Sun Avenue. It's right in the Hunting Park area, actually 3 doors down from Porky's Point. We're there 7 days a week. Ezequiel opens up at 9:30. We usually stay there till about 7 o'clock at night. Right now, water, food, and, volunteers. We need people to help us sort stuff, because it's all the red tape that's involved with this is making it really hard for us to send packages out. So we need hands to help out.
Berta, you also have an event coming up. I want to make sure we let people know about this, because you're also accepting donations and letting people know what they can do to help.
Yes, on Tuesday at 6:30, and that's in 48 and Baltimore Avenue. It's Calvary Church in the basement. We're having a forum called Puerto Rico Natural Disaster or Genocide. We will have, PowerPoint presentation and talks, and we'll also present. We're going a brigade. I'm going on October 27th through November 10th. And 4 more comrades are going from November 1st to November 7th to join the work brigades of the Puerto Rico Teachers Federation. They send working brigades to do whatever is needed, particularly to the places where has been more devastation in the mountains. So we're accepting donations, money, mosquito repellent that Anna said, antibiotic cream, that's important, aspirin, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, all these pain medications, eye drops, protein bars, small things, because we're taking it with us. So we need, even though the batteries are needed, if we take batteries, it's very heavy. So putting in the luggage will prevent us from bringing more stuff. So if you can call 724-1618 for more information, or email at www.phila, PHILA, @gmail.com for more information. But please come to the event on Tuesday, October 20th. But I wanted to briefly mention about FEMA, because that is a crime. I mean, FEMA, if we remember FEMA, what they did in Katrina, it was horrible. They brought this mobile, I don't remember how it's called, the mobile houses.
The trailers.
The trailers with formaldehyde. They were toxic.
And they had mold in them, some of them as well.
FEMA was not devised. FEMA was not devised for help. FEMA was, and I was looking for an article called Why FEMA Can't Protect Us, and it says it was set up under President Harry Truman as the Federal Civil Defense Administration was during the Cold War, because they were fearing there was, nuclear disaster, nuclear bombing, and it was for the continuity of the government. They have in the Ridge Mountains, they have hollowed a whole mountain to have a bunker. So if at that time, any event of nuclear war, they will get the main, the president and the administration and the heads of the government and business there to protect them. So it was not. Then it went, now it's under the, the Homeland Security and all that. But it has never been for helping the people. And it is proven in Puerto Rico. FEMA now, we made, and I remember we sent with Charito Morales, we sent 4 containers they were sitting in the ports because FEMA says they have to deal with it. It has to go through FEMA. And FEMA doesn't care about it. And FEMA is also the military. This is not like a nice people, civilian. FEMA is part of the military. And there is a whole militarization of Puerto Rico that is very dangerous. And during the Iraq War, the military, they made a huge encampment for the military with air conditioning, with water, in the middle of the desert where there is no
green
water.
Zone. Mm-hmm.
So that was in a few days. You tell me they cannot cross a road in Puerto Rico because there is a tree in the, they can do. And the Corps of Engineers have taken over the electricity now. So the United States could do if they wanted. Right. They could do. That's what the effort is like. It's not FEMA. It's not. We need that. Those helps get to the people that need it because they can. Don't tell me that it's no electricity, that the river they can do that. They can do that and more.
Yeah, have you been also, hearing stories and disappointed in how so many people have given, but then they haven't been able to receive?
Well, absolutely. And like Berta's saying, FEMA's saying that they can't reach here and they can't reach there. I have plenty of friends who've gone on their own to the island. And they've gotten to Barranquitas and they've gotten to Jauco. So if they've gotten there and they're civilians, it's hard for me to believe that they can't get there. During war, we drop food. We can't drop food in these areas where our brothers and sisters are. It's possible, and that's what's the frustrating part being here. For me, I want to be in Puerto Rico, but I have a daughter and, that's what's holding me back. But it's like seeing what's going on, it's a slap and an insult to us because, we know what's going on. Don't insult us because it's an insult, And like Berta said, like right now with our collection, we're kind of on hold in a sense too because we're like, is it going to get there? Is it not going to get there? And it has to get there on our own brigade. We have to physically take it ourselves. And right now we're also, Voces is also working with other activists on a national level, and it's called Diaspora in Action. And what we're doing is we're getting together and we're organizing with grassroots organizations on the ground and being able to collect money and then send that money to these organizations and know that it's going to get to Pueblo, That's another thing that I want to warn people, everybody's an emotion and everybody wants to help. Do your research on who you're sending money to. The Red Cross is not doing their job. FEMA is not doing their job. So, be careful on how they present things to us. Banco Popular is not somebody you want to give money to.
No.
The First Lady of Puerto Rico is not who you want to give money to. You don't want to put money in the hands of people who already have done so much damage to the island. And we just have to be very cautious, and we have to educate ourselves. I also want to say that Voces is having a fundraiser November 3rd, which is the first Friday. We're doing an art show. So we have local artists, Boricua artists, that are going to have their artwork there. But we want it to be a place of healing. We need to have these conversations. We need to cry together, and figure out how we're going to help our brothers and sisters, because at this point, it has to be us to help them, And so, again, if anybody wants any more information on what we're doing, you can follow us on Facebook, Voces del Barrio, and we also have an Instagram page. And we're pretty transparent on how we're trying to organize. We're trying to collaborate with other organizations that are doing the right thing as far as our people back home.
Berta, in terms of looking long term, right? You have been involved in organizing since long before the hurricanes. What are some of the other goals, once maybe the recovery effort is, sustainable or doing a little bit better? What are some of the other things you are advocating for Puerto Rico?
Well, the most important thing, and that has been the center of the Comité Boricua, is to support in the independent movement. We under colonialism, there is no real recovery. What the government, for example, now is doing in Puerto Rico and the United States is really to recover the General Electric and all these corporations. FEMA gave $5 billion to Puerto Rico, $1 billion by the junta for recovery, but that money is not going to stay in Puerto Rico. This is contracted to U.S. companies. So unless we have the efforts of grassroots organizations, that Anna mentioned, and support the independence movement, and that's what we've been trying to do in the community here. We have sound cards that go usually on Thursdays, give out some of the information that I will leave with you on why it is, because it has been demonized that we cannot be independent, that we rely on the United States. But for more than a century, we've been with the United States, and what do we have now? Nothing.
And there's all those other island nations that are independent in the Caribbean. There's this notion that, you're just a little island. How can you possibly support yourself? But, that's insulting to all the other and some of them smaller than Puerto Rico, who have been able to sustain themselves just fine.
Exactly. And in the meantime, now with the recovery, it's very important to support all these organizations that are working in Puerto Rico that are self-sustainable. There is one, for example, Casa Pueblo. Casa Pueblo is a wonderful organization that advocates a clean environment and also self-sustainability, both in agriculture and other. But right now, they have a project of alumbrar Puerto Rico con luz solar, to lighten up Puerto Rico with solar energy. And they are asking, if you can send solar lights, that you can get it for Amazon. I think it's $13 or $14. Send it to Casa Pueblo, or send it to your family, just for people to have solar energy, to have a means, because the problem now of the generators. People are depending on generator, but that needs diesel. It's very expensive. But not only that, it's contaminated the environment with carbon monoxide. And there are no trees. So the trees that have the function of cleaning the air, that air is stagnant. So there is a big pollution right now brewing in Puerto Rico with all these generators.
And also there are many Superfund sites, which have a lot of the waste. And especially in, I think it's Guayama, there was a big flood there. So when you flood a Superfund site, where does all that toxic material go? And they're really not investigating that or researching that. So people are very, very concerned. As you mentioned, it's getting in the water. People are drinking it. And we're going to see many more deaths. Unfortunately, people are literally going to be dying from this toxicity. So before we end, because we only have a couple more minutes, I want to give you both the last word. I want to give you an opportunity to give a message to those out there in the diaspora, how they can help, and also, again, how could they contact you one more time? Berta?
Yes. The message is that this is a genocide made in the United States. This is not a natural disaster. It's like how you deal with a natural disaster. And I think that it's important that we're not asking for mercy or charity from the United States. We are demanding what the United States owes the Puerto Rican people. So when we say, FEMA, help us, it's not. FEMA has the obligation, or whatever organization from the United States. We have a page also, the International Action Center, and the Philadelphia Camden Boricua Committee has a Facebook, and also Workers' World in Spanish and in English has a website in Facebook.
And your event, again, is Tuesday, October 24th at 6:30 p.m., and that's at the Calvary United Methodist Church, located at 48th and Baltimore. And you can send them an email for more information at www.phila@gmail.com.
My closing message to the diaspora is this is time that we need to unite. We need to educate ourselves, because that's the only way we're going to be able to work together to help our motherland. And let's work together, and let's not compete. Let's not make this a competition on who helps better or whatever. This takes all of us. They need us, and it's up to us to make a difference. If anybody wants to get more involved, we're looking for other people who want to collaborate in this effort. Voces is going to have a open house meeting October 28th. It's going to be at 25th and Pennsylvania Avenue at the Art Museum. If anyone's interested in joining us, we'll have the flyer up today. And again, our plan to moving forward is to help our brothers and sisters, but also to educate ourselves, because it's important right now. It's more than ever. It's our goal.
All right. I want to thank all of our guests, Berta Joubert, Ana Montanez, and Altie Carrasquillo, for joining us today on the People Power Lunch Hour. I'm Vanessa Maria Graber, your host, and if you'd like to watch this episode and all of our episodes of the People Power Lunch Hour, you can do so on phillycam.org. Thank you so much for watching and listening. That's going to do it for this episode. We'll see you next week.
Music playing, say it's soft and it's almost like praying. It's almost like praying. It's almost like praying. It's almost like praying. It's almost like Cabo Rojo, Corozal, Aguao, Guaynabo, San Lorenzo y San Germán, San Sebastián, mi viejo San Juan, Isabela, María.